I've been using the DJI Osmo Mobile 2 now for several months, and I really enjoy it. I get a lot of use out of it. It works fantastically. Battery life has been actually seems to be like what they've said it's going to be. Lasts all day for me when I'm using it with my phone, so I don't have to worry about that. And overall, it's just been a relatively flawless experience. Now, there's been a few bugs and that kind of thing with the app, or a few things that I've sort of had to work through, but overall, it's been a very easy experience with the DJI Osmo Mobile 2. However, I've got a GoPro and I've been interested in putting the GoPro on here. So they make it a little adapter and I picked it up to give it a shot. Now the adapter is pretty simple. Basically, there's a small little bracket that's screwed on. You put the GoPro in there, tighten it down, and it's got a little kind of weight here on the other end to keep it balanced when you put it into the Osmo. Once you got the GoPro and the bracket mounted on the Osmo, the stability is actually pretty good. Now the Osmo, of course, works in your typical way. So when you turn it, the camera will turn. You can, adjust it basically, and it will hold the camera in that position. Of course, you can turn the mode on where you click it, and the camera will always face the same way, regardless of how the handle is. But of course, because you can't run the DJI Go app to control the Osmo, you don't get a lot of the cool functions. So you don't get time lapse or the motion from one start point to an end point. But overall, it works pretty well. Now, there are a few drawbacks with using the DJI Osmo 2 and a GoPro adapter. The first one, for me at least, that I notice is that when you first hook everything up, if you have the GoPro shooting in wide, then you do get the edge of the gimbal in the shot. Now, you can correct that. And to do so, you just put the camera on facing the other way. The only thing I don't really like about that is when you do that, all of your controls face away from you. So you can't see the joystick, the mode button you kind of have to feel around for, and so it's just not a real smooth setup. The GoPro, of course, automatically will rotate the video and that sort of thing. But it just ends up kind of being sort of awkward. It is very functional, it works very well, but again, if you have to put that on there backwards, it just faces backward and might be awkward for you. You can't, unfortunately, because of the way the DJI Osmo is set up, have it set up normally and just spin it all the way around, because they have the locking tabs on there to prevent it from turning any further. So you can't just keep spinning it around in a circle. So you do have to use it basically backward if you want to try to avoid getting any parts of the gimbal in the shot. So when I was going through and editing this, I realized that I forgot two things that are pretty important. The first thing here is on the Osmo, I'd mentioned that if you have it mounted like how you would a phone, that the camera will catch part of the gimbal in the shot. However, you can also put it in flashlight mode, which I forgot to mention. So when you put it in flashlight mode, then the camera, even at the wide angle setting, does not get anything in the frame. So you can do that. You can walk around with that. Stabilization still works great. You still have joystick control and everything else basically on here. It's just a different way of holding it, and it keeps the gimbal from getting in the way. Now, the other thing that I wanted to go over was the fact that I stated that the DJI Osmo Mobile 2 software, the Go app, won't work with the GoPro. Now, that's sort of incorrect. You can actually sort of trick the system into working. All you have to do is you set up your phone with the Osmo like you would normally, but instead of having your phone in there, you've got the GoPro. Now, the only issue with that is anytime that you're recording anything, like doing a motion time lapse, for example, so you can set the GoPro to be facing one way, have it rotate and turn face upward and start recording. So you could have it do that. However, you end up recording on your phone as well. Now, obviously that's not a big deal because you just go through and delete that footage, but it's something that you should be aware of. Secondly, is that when I've been doing the motion time lapses, I've noticed the GoPro horizon for the gimbal being off slightly, and it'll start normal, and then once it starts the time lapse, the horizon is off. Now, I don't, of course, know why it's doing that. I would think that it's some sort of firmware issue, but when I have the phone in there, I don't run into that issue. So it might just be the weight or something like that with the actual GoPro and the adapter itself. Otherwise, everything else works. So you can set up the motion time lapse. Stabilization obviously works. You can't do active track because active track works on here. And what you can do if you want to play with it is turn active track on, select an object, and when you move your phone, the gimbal will start moving all around, basically because it thinks it's trying to find that object. So obviously active track doesn't work, But otherwise, you can use the Go app if you wanted to do a motion time lapse, like a, you know, long-term video or something while you're panning. And so that's kind of a nice unique feature that you are able to use by tricking all of the systems together into working. Now, the other issue that I've noticed while using this is the sound. When you have everything set up like this, it's pretty long. You've got the weight on one side, you've got the GoPro on the other, and you get a lot of hum noise. So when you move the Osmo around, you kind of hear it a little bit, but the GoPro really does pick that up. So if you were using it without a microphone, you'll probably have a slight hum or motor noise in there. I don't always have it. I think it's just, you know, when it's balanced perfectly, of course, there's no real sound, but when it's off by a little bit, you do pick up that sound. So that can be frustrating to deal with if you were not using an external microphone, or if you want to try to pull the audio from the GoPro. One way you can get around the issue with the camera getting the edge of the gimbal here in the shot is if you go into your settings and you change it to 2.7K and you switch it to linear or your zoom mode. Basically, you can zoom in a little bit. You want to zoom in just past the gimbal though, because sometimes when you turn it, I found that I would get a little bit of the gimbal in there, probably from the stabilization on the GoPro itself. And the last thing that I don't really like about using the Osmo and the GoPro adapter here is that it's big. This is not a small, tiny, compact unit. It does work, but because it's meant for phones, you end up with a very large, piece on here basically, and there's no easy way to kind of lay it down or store it in the backpack very easily because the edge of the gimbal hits, or it's not a real compact setup. Obviously, this is a lot smaller than using a DSLR and, a larger gimbal or anything like that. But still, this is not like a tiny thing that you'll just pull out of your bag real quick. But of course, that's enough talking and diagnosing from me. Take a look at this footage and see how the GoPro actually functions on the DJI Osmo Mobile 2. Now the next step up from here for an actual stabilizer for a GoPro would be like the Fiotech G6. Now I'll be going over a review of this in a different video, so of course don't forget to subscribe to the channel, comment below with any questions that you have, and we'll see you in the next video. Now, if you have the DJI Osmo Mobile 2 and you've got a GoPro and you're looking to maybe get stabilized footage, I do recommend picking up the adapter. They're super cheap. You'll find the link here down in the description. You can try it out. Now, if you're using GoPros a lot and you want stabilized footage frequently, I would probably just get a regular gimbal for the actual GoPro itself instead of running the DJI Osmo Mobile 2 and the adapter. It's just a little bit, clunky because of the larger size. It's not optimized for, for the GoPro, and so you kind of have to do this workaround to get it working, and it does work, but for ease of use, obviously having a dedicated gimbal for the GoPro would be the superior option. However, if you've got about 20 bucks and you want to give it a shot and you want to try it out, basically see if maybe you would use it a lot more if you had stabilized footage from your GoPro, pick it up, try it out. It's pretty cheap to use and try, and that way if you hate it, no big deal.